In the depths of the Cold War, beneath the dark waters of the North Sea, a daring mission took place, one so secret that its details remained classified for decades. A British nuclear submarine, the HMS Conqueror, stealthy and unseen, crept towards an unsuspecting Soviet vessel. Its mission? Steal top secret sonar technology without a single shot being fired. This is the story of Operation Barmaid, one of the most audacious acts of underwater espionage ever attempted. The year's 1982. Somewhere in the North Sea, a beast waits, stalking its prey. Its target, a Soviet AGI spy trawler waving the Polish flag. Being towed behind it, approximately 2 miles, was advanced Soviet sonar technology that the British and the American forces had yearned for. But wait, what led to this point? The Cold War had been going on for approximately 4 decades, with the end being seen through just a pinhole. The Soviet forces had amped up their naval forces and were ready to fight back against the Western powers. The majority would start with the enlargement and the improvement of the Soviet submarine fleet. Soviet submarines were now quieter and faster than American and British submarines, and were now performing what they called bouncing maneuvers, which was basically the way of the Soviets trolling us. They would sneak up behind the submarine, switch on their active radar so that the enemy submarine would hear their ping. And this was basically the Soviet Union's way of saying, if we were at war, you would be dead. The British and the Americans were not having it. And let me elaborate for you real quick. On a submarine, there are 2 different types of radars, active and passive sonar. Active emits a short burst of sound that travels through the ocean and bounces off of any object that it hits, pretty much like echolocation. Passive radar, on the other hand, just listens for noise. Passive radar was seen as more advanced and would be used on a majority of submarines and ships. I say ships too because the radar wasn't actually on the vessel. I mean, yeah, some would have it on the vessel, but the point of it is to listen in. And the one major flaw of that is they could hear their own ship too. So to solve this problem, the passive radar would be towed behind the ship or the submarine. And this is what gave the Western powers a little edge during the Cold War in the sea. This would be until the Soviets would copy it and even better it. So, with seemingly no upper hand in the naval aspect, Americans needed to find a way to win this arms race. This would be until the American government would get word of advanced Soviet sonar technology being towed in the North Sea. And much how we stole the Mi-24 attack chopper right under the Soviet Union's nose, we would do the same thing here, only quite literally. So the Americans would look at the British Royal Navy and say, I need you to steal that. And the British Royal Navy would say, bet. Because if we can't have it, let's just steal it. And why would they ask the British to do this? Well, it was speculated that if the British would have gotten caught, that the global and the political backlash would have been lesser than if America would have been caught. Which I agree. If America would have been caught doing something like this, it could have meant war. Either way, the mission would be a go. General Dynamics would step into this operation making television-guided pincers. These pincers would cut in a way that it would look like the line was snapped on a rugged ocean object rather than cut, which is genius engineering from the jump. This device would be sent to the British and fit to the HMS Conqueror, the British Royal Navy's most advanced and agile nuclear submarine, commanded by Captain Christopher Rayford Brown. He would be in charge of overseeing and executing the seemingly impossible task. And just in case you don't understand how dangerous this mission really is, let me help you. First, the British Royal Navy would have to execute this operation in Soviet territory. So if they were caught, a quick execution would take place. Second, the British Royal Navy would have to cut a wire at the right distance at the right pace in the ocean, which may or may not be smooth sailing. And third, they would have to avoid the active and the passive sonars of the ship. There was no room for error on this mission. Everyone on board that ship had to be alert, precise, and ready for anything to happen. And after much planning and preparation, the hunt would begin. The waters were cold, it was dark out, and the HMS Conqueror had been stalking its prey for quite some time. The crew on the edge of their seats ready for any response that is to come, as the HMS Conqueror gets herself into position and sinks down to the depths, approaching its target. One of the crew was quoted as saying, "That was the genius of the exercise. There is a way of approaching the blind spot that involves going deep and then coming up at an angle, literally below the vessel." As the steel and titanium whale gets closer, he rises higher and higher, going slow as to not alert the radar. On top of all the other challenges I've already mentioned, the camera would only be able to see the cable from meters away, so they had to get close. Still undetected, the camera is activated and the pincer is readied. As they approach ever so slightly, the cable comes within view. The pincer is now being controlled and is deployed right onto the cable. And after only seconds, but what felt like an eternity to the crew, the wire was cut, still while being completely undetected. As the HMS Conqueror drifts quietly away with his payload, the job is not finished. They are still close to the ship and cannot risk detection. They wait till they are miles out to break radio silence and send out divers to bring the device on board the submarine. After that, they quickly head back to base. Immediately after reaching the base, the device would be loaded onto an American aircraft and sent back to the mainland. Operation Barmaid is now declared a success. The Western powers once again have the edge over the Soviet Union, and they would have never learned what happened to their high-tech espionage device until nearly 30 years later. This was the story of Operation Barmaid, a daring and seemingly impossible mission that would be executed with the utmost planning and precision. Thank you all so much for watching. You all have a good day and a good night. Peace.